Hey, we've got another guest on for this week's show that you've seen before, and she's going to give us an update on how an effort within New York State has received national coverage. It's been that important on this week's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which as always is brought to you those fine folks at, where are they from again? Let's see, I don't really even remember. Yeah, they're brought to you
Each
by
week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. The Mendon Honeoye Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi there, and welcome again to this week's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report. With us today is Marley Hornik. You might remember her from last October when she told us about what New York Citizens Audit was doing. Well, she's got some big news to share with us today about what's gone on over the last 6 months or so. Marley, before we start, Marley, why don't you reintroduce yourself to the audience for those of you who might not know who she is. She's actually a pretty cool person. Marley, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are right now.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. I am the Executive Director of New York Citizens Audit, which is truly a miraculous team of citizens from across New York State, from Montauk to Buffalo, over 2,000 people now working together to ensure accurate, provable elections for the people of New York State and the people of America. We have been using publicly requested, publicly available documents known as the voter roll databases from the state and from the counties to uncover truths about our election system that frankly defy the law. So I am happy to share some of those findings with you and talk about where New York Citizens Audit is at and how you can get involved.
All right, great, Marley. First, let's start off with some of your findings, your conclusions that you've reached. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll explore some other things a little bit deeper. So again, give us a recap of what the conclusions were that you guys settled on based on your research.
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and actually read you a little bit of election law to help you understand the context of our findings. So, under New York State database regulations, under the codes and rules and regulations of New York State, it says nice voter, that's the New York State voter roll database, nice voter shall maintain one record for each registered voter, including the statewide unique identifier. And it continues, nice voter shall assign a unique identifier to every voter that will remain with the voter for their voting life. So that's one of the reasons why New York Citizens Audit is extremely concerned, and the people that we share this information with agree that there's no reason under the law why 1.17 million unique individuals in Nice Voter have been assigned 2.4 million unique state identifiers, which is a total of 1.25 million extra registration numbers that can be used to cast votes. Now, our election officials assure us that this is not a problem. They say it is possible for multiple reasons that a voter may have multiple records with different state IDs. But that seems to be in outright defiance of the law, which says they can't do that. So New York Citizens Audit is simply asking for information about this. Why does that exist? Also, there's a very simple and easy to understand law that says only the county boards of elections are allowed to create, alter, or delete registration records in the databases. The state database is just a compilation of all of those registrations that have been entered at the county level. So again, we're wondering why there are 1.9 million more registrations in the state database than exist in the county databases. That's actually only for 7 counties. That's for the 5 boroughs of New York City and for Erie and Nassau counties. That means there are 55 counties not included in that total. So again, election officials assure us that's nothing to be concerned about, but you don't have to be an attorney to realize that violates the law. Why?
Well, let's just, for my edification, the voter ID aspect of things, that isn't really addressing necessarily people who are on the rolls who shouldn't be on the rolls. This is just addressing people who are on the rolls but have multiple IDs and therefore can vote under each ID. Is that a correct way of restating what you said?
Well, it's somewhat correct. The only difference I would argue is that it's really impossible for a voter to utilize that circumstance to cast multiple votes. The reason is most voters, in fact, I've never met a single voter who knows what their state board of elections identification number is, never mind their second, third, or 25th number. Therefore, how can a voter use that for fraud? We're given a ballot based on our name and address. However, we have discovered in multiple elections that many of these numbers are used for double voting. So it appears that the only way this could be happening is within the database itself, someone who has administrative access over the database. So for example, in the 2020 general election, we found roughly 2,600 instances where people with more than one state ID number had voted more than once. In the 2022 general election, we found roughly 2,000 of them, but the two groups don't overlap. If this was done by voters, you would think to yourself that the same person would game the system in the same way again.
So one person, multiple IDs, multiple votes in both of those elections.
Correct.
A little over 2,000 people that's what occurred. And this is only within those handful of counties that you've looked at, right? Not beyond that. Have you?
No, that's a statewide figure, but
okay.
it's a little complicated to understand. So out of the 2.4 million total state ID numbers, 696,000 votes were cast. We've canvassed many of those 1.1 million donors, we call them, the people like the original registrants who have more than one ID. And we have proven that there are many of them that are completely fictitious. We've also proven that many of them are not fictitious. They're a real person who has no idea that they had 2 state ID numbers in the database, or 5 or 7. So the issue is you can only have one under the law. It is the affirmative duty of our election officials to make sure the law is followed, that their procedures and their practices uphold the law. If there are people who have more than one ID, who are casting more than one vote, it's the duty of the election officials to figure out how that's happening. Is it fraud? Document every aspect of that in order to be able to prove to the people of New York State and the American people that the outcome of every single one of the elections they have certified is absolutely accurate. There are no open questions left.
So what kind of response did you get from the election officials when you brought this up to them?
Well, that's a good question. Thankfully, we have multiple election officials in New York State, and so we have had multiple responses. We have had very successful meetings with some local commissioners of the boards of elections. We have had the opportunity to show them our findings and to show them actually how we believe some of this may be accomplished, which is through algorithms embedded into the voter roll databases, which we have reverse engineered, much to the surprise of everyone, since their presence in the databases is absolutely illegal. So there have been some very successful meetings. However, we have also been dismissed and derided by commissioners at the local and state levels. In fact, recently, our chief election official for New York State, Kristen Zabrowski-Stavisky, recently called New York Citizens Audit, or alluded that New York Citizens Audit is a malicious group of people working to undermine our democracy. So it is an open question how it is that a group of honest volunteer citizens working to uphold the laws which protect our sovereignty in America are somehow attacking the integrity of our system.
You know, one of the things that I find interesting is that you've actually been able to pinpoint individual voters with multiple IDs who have, quote unquote, voted twice. Now, they may not have actually themselves voted twice, but their IDs have voted for them. Have you had the chance to actually talk to these people individually? Were you able to get a hold of them, or are they shielded from you and you're only looking at their, say, IDs or addresses or something like that? How do you know that it's the same person? Let's go with that.
That is an excellent question. And what we have done so far to verify our suspicions about these registration records is we have canvassed over 1,000 addresses in New York State where what we call cloned registrants are said to reside. So we call a cloned registrant is not a recognized term by the State Board of Elections. They call all of these registrations duplicates. If you appear more than once in the state database, regardless of whether you have more than one State Board of Elections ID number, they call you a duplicate. We maintain that if you have more than one appearance in the rolls and they have the same ID number, that's a duplicate. If you have a new State Board of Elections ID number, that is illegal. And we identify those registrants as clones. We have nearly exclusively canvassed clones for exactly the reason that you bring up. Is this really what's going on? That was our question from the beginning. So we decided, and we said, if it is what's really going on, then it's almost that we now feel an affirmative duty to let people know that they may be getting framed for multiple felonies by the State Board of Elections. Whether through dereliction of duty or deliberate malfeasance, I have no idea. But one way or another, this is an instance of identity theft taking place against New York State citizens. If like we say, what we imagined was happening was what was happening. So when we go and canvass people, we invariably find one of two circumstances. We find that we were right, and the person was unaware of having more than one State Board of Elections ID number, was unaware of having cast more than one vote. In many instances, the people were unaware of having voted at all because they hadn't chosen not to vote, but their ID number had been used to apply a vote. Again, how is that happening? And the other instance is that we go and canvass the address and we discover that the person said to reside at that address, who is in possession of more than one State Board of Election ID number, doesn't exist. And no one at that address has ever heard of that person. And that we have one example of that we talk about frequently because he is exemplative of many, many of the problems we have uncovered in Nice Voter. This gentleman has 25 unique ID numbers in Nice Voter. They are in each of 25 different counties. They were all made within a month of each other in the year 2000. They were all simultaneously active in the voter roll database for a minimum of 4 years, and some of them were simultaneously active for as long as 15 years. The state database does not record any votes for any of these registrants, but the county voter information reports in 2 counties record a vote in 2000, which is to say he double voted in 2000 because 2 different ID numbers in 2 different counties list him as having voted. But when we canvassed his addresses, which we have canvassed 19 of his 25 addresses, no one has ever heard of this person. He has never existed or lived at any of these addresses. In fact, his name is so unique that there are only 3 instances in the entire United States of this name, and none of them have ever lived in New York. So
Wow.
there are so many questions that this one registrant exemplifies. We have millions of examples of all of those. Each one of those problems exists in the database in tens of thousands of instances, in some cases millions of instances. The data in our state voter roll database, which is part of our national security infrastructure, is so riddled with false information that it's literally impossible to tell what part of it is real.
Well, you bring up a couple of things that I want to talk about after the break. One of them is, how do you know that you're not being set up? That's what you said, and we'll get to that right after this break, as well as some of the national coverage that you've received. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. "50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York." Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Welcome back to the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Grossa. Today we have Marley Hornik, who is the Executive Director of Citizens New York Audit. And Marley, this question actually came from one of the viewers. If you have a question and you're watching it live, just go to the chat and give me the question. We'll pass it on. But this question is, how do I know I'm not voting twice? I mean, you mentioned that some of these people don't even know they have multiple IDs and aren't aware that there's multiple votes going on, yet they still may be liable. And this is very concerning. So how do people check up to see if they actually have voted twice? Well, not on purpose, but somebody, maybe some machine voted for them, say.
Well, it's an excellent question, and I'm sorry to say that I know of only one way to find that out, and that is to contact New York Citizens Audit and beg us to look you up in the state database, which we may or may not have any time to do, given that our entire organization is volunteer, and we have a limit of hours we can devote to looking up individual registrants. The reason that's the only way to find out is because our county commissioners are actually very limited in the amount of information they can seek from the state database at any one time. The federal law and the Help America Vote Act says that our local commissioners have to be able to have access to the state database, which is considered the official record under federal law. So in New York, They do follow the letter of the law, but they don't really follow the spirit of the law. It is possible for county commissioners to look up one record at a time, but they are not, like New York Citizens Audit is, looking at the entire state database. They are not aware of how to search the database to return multiple records for the same person that may contain one simple typographical error, which allows the assignment of a secondary state Board of Elections ID number to go undetected, except by citizen investigators. So it's really not so easy to find out if you are one of the targets. Hopefully, with only about, I guess, 1.172 million people left to canvass in New York State, we may get to you. But I'm not sure how else you can achieve it, honestly.
So how do people get a hold of you? I know that you were going to mention this at the end, but let's just go right to it. How would they get a hold of you if they had this question?
Sure. Our website is auditny.com. It is a wealth of information about our voting system in New York State and everything that New York Citizens Audit has uncovered. There are videos, long videos, short videos, 1-minute videos, and 1-hour videos. There are reports and summary sheets. There is a resolution for an audit, an end-to-end audit of the 2022 general election in New York that you are encouraged to participate in bringing to your town and county officials and getting their signatures on. These are all resources you can access right now by going to auditny.com. And there
Excellent.
is a way to email us there as well. You can just simply email info@auditny.com, or you can message us on any social media platform, New York Citizens Audit.
All right. So we got that, folks. Hopefully you wrote it down. So Marley, now, since we talked to you in October, you guys have made national news. You've appeared in a couple places. Can you tell us a little bit about how they found you and what they seemed most interested in when they asked you questions?
Those are great questions. Honestly, New York Citizens Audit is national news because it turns out that the sheer volume of anomalies in New York State within the voter roll databases is almost cumulative of every other state's anomalies. And I'll give you a quick example. Let me just pull up this chart. Here we go. Okay. So in New York State, we have within the NICE voter database 1.25 million excess voter registrations. We have 1.5 million purged, no purge date registrations, which each one of which is clearly a violation of what's called black letter election law. It means you don't have to be an attorney to know what it says. And we have 1.9 million records in the state database, not in the county databases. That is a total of 4.63 million violations. Now, here we go. The population of Wyoming is about 576,000. The population of Vermont, 643,000. I'm going to cut to the chase. You add Wyoming, Vermont, Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Delaware together, and their populations summed equal 4.63 million people. So the fact that New York State election officials are sitting on a minimum equivalent of registration and voting violations as the population of 6 combined states is national news. That is a massive story. And unfortunately, because they don't really seem interested in having an honest conversation about how these issues could be happening, could be repaired, and could be addressed in order to protect the sovereignty of the American people over our government, it does appear that either they find themselves in the unfortunate position of being caught with their hands in the cookie jar and they want to deny that, or They simply feel that they are somehow granted the right to ignore our laws.
When you appeared on these national shows, what sort of feedback did you get? Did you get feedback from other states wondering, hey, can I do this in our state? Or were they just focused on New York?
No, absolutely. In fact, New York Citizens Audit is becoming a leader nationally in the work that faces every state, frankly, of getting our voter rolls to align with the state and federal laws that regulate their administration. And I say that carefully because people talk about dirty voter rolls and cleaning the voter rolls. What New York Citizens Audit has uncovered in Nice Voter, the official record for New York State regarding the administration and certification of all federal elections, is that it's literally uncleanable. It is so full of false data that it cannot be repaired. And that also has to do, again, with the algorithms we reverse engineered that are embedded carefully and deeply hidden within Nice Voter, embedded in there, and they are regulating the assignment of state and county ID numbers in a way that appears to be an advantage in election manipulation, although we can't prove that that's how it's being used. It's an open question why there would be this kind of deeply embedded hidden manipulation inside the voter roll database if it wasn't for the purpose of election manipulation, because it's illegal, extremely expensive, and it has every hallmark of an intelligence operation. Again, I have no idea if that's a U.S. intelligence operation or some other country infiltrating into our national security infrastructure, but there's no question that it's there. And we have met multiple times with cyber intelligence experts who have told us this is absolutely against the law.
What's next for New York Citizens Audit? Are you planning to meet with more officials? Are you going to do another analysis? What do you have next on your agenda?
Actually, we have something very exciting coming up soon. We are going to be presenting next week to the New York State Assembly and Senate election law committees. We are going to be doing a presentation, a 45-minute presentation of our findings in the voter roll databases, including the critical data breach, the total loss of control data breach of Nice Voter, a national security emergency. And we are going to be calling upon those representatives of we the people to fund an end-to-end audit of the New York State Board of Elections in regards to the 2022 administration and certification, end-to-end. So from registration all the way through certification, every aspect of that election needs to be opened up so that the people can see the receipts and we can decide whether or not we agree that that election was provably accurate and compliant with our laws. So that presentation is coming up next week. If you are living in the district of an assembly or Senate member who is on those election law committees, it is imperative that you contact them and request that they definitely attend this technical briefing with New York Citizens Audit next week. And of course, no matter where you are in New York State, you have every right to call those representatives and insist, again, we insist that you attend this briefing. We demand that you attend this briefing and become educated about what the New York State Board of Elections has been doing and has been allowing. The rule of law in America is our agreement to live according to moral principles that honor the sanctity of this world. Our freedom to live under the sovereign rule of our divine maker is the inalienable right our Constitution protects. Accurate, provable elections are what secure this fundamental American guarantee, and our election officials do not have the privilege to defy the affirmative duties for accuracy and compliance that are granted them under the law. It is critical that New York State citizens participate in this process by calling our elected officials and telling them, you represent me and I want you at this technical briefing with New York Citizens Audit.
All right. Thank you, Marley. And thank you all for watching. Once again, Marley, if you want to give your email address, make sure that I have it right on the screen for more information. It's auditnewyork.com. If you wanted to go and see more about what they're doing and maybe connect with them, join them, do that sort of thing. Also, if you are interested, Marley is also going to be presenting at our summit in May. That's a month from now. Let's see, do we have that one up there? This is a long one. Whoa, you're going to need your magnifying glass for this one. I'll leave it up there for a little bit. You can see where it is. There's got to be an easier way to get to it. But that's our Influencer Action Summit. Marley's going to be one of the speakers. It's a kind of a unique way of helping people get more engaged and feel better about themselves. Once again, if you want to be a member of the live audience of this show, this one's a little easier to read. Just go to stateof.greaterwesternewyork.com and register for free. Every Thursday morning, you'll get the invite and you'll be able to participate in the live audience. It's the only way that you can ask questions with the guests. Otherwise, you can watch the show on our archive, on our database that is in the website, stateof.greaterwesternewyork.com. Likewise, if you are a friend or a subscriber to our YouTube channel, if you like our Facebook page, every Sunday at 1:30 on both of those platforms, we will rebroadcast the show and you will be notified. So that's it for this week. Again, Marley, thanks for being a part of today's show. And thank you all for watching. And we'll see you all next week.